Hey, Gary, how are things?
Things are great, but I crushed my mortgage payment with owning without even leaving my couch. I got a no closing cost refi at a great low rate, and owning did it all in less than 3 weeks. It was easy, no muss, no fuss.
Be like Gary. Call Owning at 855-5-OWNING and crush your mortgage payment with today's 15-year fixed refi at 1.875% rated APR with no closing costs. None. Zero. Even if you've refinanced recently, call 855-5-OWNING and let us crush your monthly payment even more. That's 855-5-OWNING or log on to owning.com.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act, subject to credit approval. Call 833-852-6464 for terms and conditions.
You can crush it too with a 15-year fixed 1.875% rated APR with absolutely no closing cost.
All right, let's clear this garage. Start a pile here for donations, one over here for recycling, and one more over here for trash. Hang on, what are you doing?
Recycling?
We may need that paint one day, and that can't be recycled.
First, this can looks older than me. And second, paintcare.org says you can.
Paintcare.org. Let me see. Oh, and there's a drop-off site close by. And it's free? Nice.
Dad, no.
Well, a couple weeks ago, when I had a chance to fill in, we talked to the head of the Minnesota chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, right after they made their recommendation that students wear masks when returning to school, and he was fully on board, and we talked about that. And since that time, we've seen a couple of school districts in Minnesota recommend that students wear masks when they return to class. Not seen many yet require it, and that is a question I wanted to pose to our next guest, and we are pleased to be joined by Dr. Lee Beers, who is president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Beers, thank you so much for joining us this morning on WCCO.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
As I mentioned, AAP, one of the first to recommend masks for kids returning to school, whether or not they're vaccinated. As I mentioned, some school districts here in Minnesota recommending it. Do you think states like Minnesota should do more than that and require it? Are we at that point yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at our guidance for safe return to schools, the first and most important thing is that it really does need to be a priority for children to get back to safe in-person learning. And there's many layers of precautions that we can take to be able to do that, and one of those is universal masking. And so I do think it's important for schools to have policies that do require universal masking for children ages 2 and up and adults.
A lot of the pushback we see, Dr. Beers, from people who are against it talk about psychological effects and the harm that masks can do. Is there any evidence at all from your standpoint, that masks do have on children?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I do think it's a common misconception. And what we know about mask coverings in children and adults is that they are actually quite safe. And they're effective at decreasing the spread of COVID. Nothing's 100%, but they are actually quite effective at decreasing the spread and reducing the risk, which is why we recommend it as part of a group of layered precautions. I think we sometimes hear concerns about, sort of the impact on children in social emotionally. And what our experience is and what the evidence has shown is that kids really do quite well with this. In fact, often adults have a harder time with it than kids. But if we provide kids good support and encouragement and really just don't make a big deal out of it, they really do quite well. We also, it's probably important to emphasize, in our guidance, we talk about how, there are going to be times where in school for learning purposes, maybe a child is getting speech therapy, they need to take the mask down, and that flexibility is very important, and that's an important part of implementing a new school policy. But the vast majority of children can safely wear masks without any long-term detriment.
Talking to Dr. Lee Beers, president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Beers, where are we at with getting vaccines for kids 12 and under? Do you think that's something we'll see soon?
Well, we hope it's something we'll see soon. Certainly, it's completely dependent upon the results of the trials and what the FDA thinks when they look at that. But everything that we're hearing sounds very encouraging, very promising. That by the fall, maybe early winter, that we will have vaccines for younger kids. And I'll say, there's just lots of parents, pediatricians are really looking forward to that, because we want to keep all kids healthy and well, and vaccines, COVID vaccines, are safe and effective, and we want to make sure that is available as soon as possible for as many kids as possible.
We often talk about the other effects that the pandemic presents, and one of them is this that is making headlines, is about the preventative care that we give our kids, checkups, things like that. Those have really fallen behind in the pandemic, have they not?
Yeah, they absolutely have. We've seen actually a pretty big dip in well visits and immunization rates as well. There's some recent reports that there were over 11 million missed doses of routine immunizations, and that concerns us as well, because we want to make sure that kids stay healthy and well across the board, and that includes being protected against all vaccine preventable diseases. I also think it's so important. Your pediatrician is there for you to talk about and work with you on all sorts of things. Getting you up to date on your immunizations, but also talking about any chronic health conditions you might have, like asthma, checking in on your growth and your development and your social emotional development and your mental health. And so it's just, I think, so important if you have fallen behind on your child's well visits, to get back in there so that you can get caught up and connect with your pediatrician again.
When you mentioned that we're falling behind on the routine vaccinations, do we know the reasoning behind that? I'm concerned that this hesitation about the COVID vaccine will lead to hesitation on other vaccines.
Yeah, I think we don't 100% know that for sure what the causes are. I think it's probably in a lot of different causes altogether. I think particularly early on, families were a little worried about going into the doctor's office, because they weren't sure if that was a place where they might be at risk to get infected with COVID. And actually, we can really reassure families about that. Doctors' offices are very safe places to be. They're taking, lots of precautions to make sure that they're keeping everybody in their offices, their patients, their staff safe. I think also just for many families, it's been a hard year, and families are juggling, working from home and virtual schooling and the stresses that have come along with this pandemic. And so it's very natural sometimes for things that don't seem immediately urgent for those to kind of get pushed off or dropped off. And so I think that's another reason. You do point out, though, for a long time we've seen families who have questions about vaccines or actual vaccine hesitancy, and as pediatricians, we want to be able to answer those questions. We want to be able to help you sort through all that information that's out there, some of which is good and accurate, and a lot of which is not accurate and is misinformation. And so as pediatricians, we want to be there to help you sort through all of that.
Dr. Lee Beers, president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Thank you, Dr. Beers. Appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
657 News Talk 830 WCCO. Text us 651-989-9226. Kids going back to school, even if it's required or recommended. You're going to put masks in your kids? How do you feel about that? 651-989-9226. Adam Carter, the WCCO Morning News, CBS News on the way.
Hey, Gary, how are things?
Things are great, but I crushed my mortgage payment with owning without even leaving my couch. I got a no closing cost refi at a great low rate, and owning did it all in less than 3 weeks. It was easy, no muss, no fuss.
Be like Gary. Call Owning at 855-5-OWNING and crush your mortgage payment with today's 15-year fixed refi at 1.875% rated APR with no closing costs. None. Zero. Even if you've refinanced recently, call 855-5-OWNING and let us crush your monthly payment even more. That's 855-5-OWNING or log on to owning.com.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act, subject to credit approval. Call 833-852-6464 for terms and conditions.
You can crush it too with a 15-year fixed 1.875% rated APR with absolutely no closing cost.
Hey, we're the hosts of Pod Save America. Every week we break down the political news that makes us laugh, cry, and scream into the void with a conversation that's entertaining, informative, and hopefully useful.
We try to be serious without taking ourselves too seriously because we all have to stay in the fight. Democracy is under attack, and there's a whole right-wing machine that's counting on the rest of us to give up and check out, and we can't let them win.
So join us. New episodes of Pod Save America drop Mondays and Thursdays. Listen for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, let's clear this garage. Start a pile here for donations, one over here for recycling, and one more over here for trash. Hang on, what are you doing?
Recycling?
We may need that paint one day, and that can't be recycled.
First, this can looks older than me. And second, paintcare.org says you can.
Paintcare.org. Let me see. Oh, and there's a drop-off site close by. And it's free? Nice.
Dad, no.